The mining station Kepler 442b hummed with the constant vibration of heavy machinery, tearing precious metals from the planet's crust. In the deepest sections of the facility, where the air recyclers struggled to keep up with the toxic fumes, something small and frightened huddled in the shadows. Zix was no bigger than a human child, with soft blue-gray skin that shimmered like starlight and large dark eyes that reflected every emotion. Her species, the Villani, were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and skilled engineers. They were also known for their fierce protection of their young. That made her current situation all the more tragic. The Coraxian slavers had attacked her family's trading vessel 3 cycles ago. While her parents fought desperately to defend their ship, they had hidden Zix in an escape pod with barely enough supplies for a few days. The pod had drifted through space until a salvage crew found it and brought it to this remote mining station. But instead of helping a lost child, they saw opportunity. "The little alien will work in the ventilation shafts," growled Vex, the Coraxian overseer whose scales were marked with the ritual scars of a warrior. "She's small enough to reach the places our workers cannot. If she refuses, she gets no food." Zix understood enough of the common galactic language to know she was trapped. The mining station was run by a consortium of the galaxy's most ruthless species. Coraxians, Thrakari, and Zephyrians worked together here, united only by their greed and their complete lack of empathy for weaker beings. For weeks, Zix crawled through narrow maintenance tunnels, her small hands working to clear blockages and repair damaged systems. The work was dangerous. Sharp metal edges cut her soft skin, and toxic gases made her cough until her whole body shook. The older workers, mostly Thrakari with their insect-like appearance and cruel mandibles, took pleasure in making her life miserable. They would kick her food bowl away when she tried to eat, or push her into the most dangerous sections of the mine. "Pathetic little thing," hissed one of the Thrakari workers, its compound eyes gleaming with malice. "Your kind thinks they're so smart with their fancy technology. Let's see how smart you are when you're crawling through acid-washed pipes." Zix had stopped crying after the first week. Tears accomplished nothing here, and showing weakness only brought more cruelty. Instead, she focused on survival, eating whatever scraps she could find and sleeping in the smallest hiding spots she could squeeze into. But everything changed the day the human transport ship, Endeavor, docked at the station. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago. Most alien species saw them as primitive barbarians, useful only for their willingness to take dangerous jobs that other species avoided. The mining consortium hired human workers because they were cheap, expendable, and supposedly too stupid to cause trouble. Commander Sarah Chen led the group of 20 human miners and engineers who disembarked from the Endeavor. She was a compact woman with steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. The humans under her command were a rough bunch, former military personnel and asteroid miners who had signed up for hazardous duty pay. "Remember," Chen told her team as they gathered their equipment, "we're here to work, not to make friends. These alien bastards don't think much of humans, and I'd rather keep it that way. Let them underestimate us." The human team was assigned to the deepest levels of the mine, where radiation levels were highest and cave-ins most common. It was dangerous work that would have killed most other species within days. But humans had evolved on a death world, where everything from the weather to the wildlife tried to kill them. They adapted. Zix first saw the humans during a shift change. She was hiding in an air vent, nursing a fresh burn on her arm from a steam leak, when she watched the strange bipedal creatures walk past. They looked different from the other species on the station, where the Coraxians moved with predatory grace and the Thrakari scuttled with insectoid efficiency. The humans moved with a confident stride that suggested they feared nothing. But what struck Zix most was their behavior toward each other. While other species on the station formed loose hierarchies based on strength and cunning, the humans worked as a coordinated unit. They shared their food, helped injured teammates, and showed genuine concern for each other's well-being. "Martinez, your radiation exposure is getting close to the limit," she heard Commander Chen say to one of her men. "I'm rotating you to surface duty for the next 3 days." "I can handle it, Commander," the human called Martinez replied. "Not negotiable," Chen said firmly. "I don't leave people behind, and I sure as hell don't let them cook themselves with radiation poisoning." Zix found herself watching the humans whenever she could. There was something about them that was different from every other species she had encountered. They seemed to care about things beyond themselves, even about creatures they barely knew. But her observations came at a cost. The Thrakari worker who supervised her section had noticed her distraction. "Lazy little pest," it chittered angrily, grabbing Zix by her arm with one of its sharp-clawed hands. "You think you can daydream while there's work to be done? Maybe a few hours without air will teach you to focus." The Thrakari worker dragged Zix toward one of the sealed maintenance chambers, a punishment that had killed workers before. But as they passed through the main corridor, they encountered Commander Chen returning from her shift. The human stopped walking and looked directly at the Thrakari worker. "What are you doing with the child?" "Not your concern, human," the Thrakari replied dismissively. "This is station business." Chen's expression changed, and suddenly Zix understood why other species might fear humans. There was something dangerous in the woman's eyes, something that suggested she had survived things that would have destroyed other beings. "I'm making it my concern," Chen said quietly. "Put the child down." The confrontation was about to begin. The Thrakari worker's mandibles clicked together in what Zix had learned was a sign of agitation. Its compound eyes fixed on Commander Chen with the kind of predatory focus that usually made other species back down immediately. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and natural armor plating that could deflect most small arms' fire. "You dare challenge me, primitive?" the Thrakari hissed, its voice carrying the electronic buzzing that all its species used for emphasis. "I am Crixtal, veteran of 17 planetary conquests. You are nothing but a soft-skinned ape." Chen didn't move. She stood perfectly still. Her hands relaxed at her sides, but Zix could see the subtle tension in her posture. It reminded Zix of something her father had told her about Earth predators, how they could appear calm right before they struck. "I said put the child down," Chen repeated, her voice carrying a quiet authority that made even some of the nearby Coraxian workers pause in their activities. Crixtal's grip tightened on Zix's arm, making her whimper despite her efforts to stay silent. "This slave has been lazy. Station protocol demands punishment. You have no authority here, human." "Actually, I do." Chen reached into her jacket and pulled out a datapad, displaying it for Crixtal to see. "Galactic Child Protection Act, ratified by the Galactic Council 2 years ago. It clearly states that no being under the age of maturity for their species can be subjected to dangerous working conditions or cruel punishment." Crixtal's mandibles clicked faster. "The Volani are not part of the Galactic Council. Their protections do not apply." "Wrong again." Chen's smile was cold and sharp. "The act applies to all children found in Council-controlled space, regardless of their species membership status. This mining station operates under a Council charter." She gestured toward the corridor walls where official Council certification badges were displayed. "That makes it Council territory." The standoff stretched for several seconds. Around them, other workers had stopped to watch, sensing that something significant was happening. Zix had never seen anyone stand up to the station's enforcers before. Most beings were too afraid or too indifferent to interfere. Crixtal finally released Zix, but its voice carried venomous promise. "This is not finished, human. You have made an enemy today." "Get in line," Chen replied without emotion. "I've got more enemies than I can count, and most of them are a lot scarier than you." The Thrakari worker stormed away, its claws clicking against the metal floor. Chen knelt down to Zix's level, and for the first time in weeks someone looked at her with kindness instead of contempt or indifference. "Are you hurt?" Chen asked, her voice much gentler than it had been moments before. Zix tried to answer, but the words caught in her throat. She had forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about her well-being. Chen noticed the burn on Zix's arm, and the various cuts and bruises that covered her small body. Her expression darkened. "How long has this been going on?" "Many cycles," Zix whispered, using the galactic standard term for days. "Since the slavers brought me here." "Slavers?" Chen's voice took on that dangerous edge again. "You're not here voluntarily?" Zix shook her head, and the whole story came pouring out. Her family's trading ship, the attack, the escape pod, and her subsequent enslavement at the mining station. Chen listened without interruption, her jaw growing tighter with each detail. "What's your name, little one?" Chen asked when Zix finished. "Zixtalani Moore," Zix replied, then added quickly, "But everyone calls me Zix." "Well, Zix, my name is Sarah Chen, and I promise you that what's been happening to you ends right now. Chen stood up and activated her comm device. Martinez, Garcia, meet me at my quarters. We have a situation. Chen's quarters were sparse but clean, a marked contrast to the grimy common areas where most station workers lived. She had Zix sit on her bunk while she cleaned and bandaged the worst of her injuries. The human's hands were gentle but efficient, and Zix found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. "Commander," came a voice from the door. Two more humans entered, both large men with the weathered look of career spacers. "You called for us?" Martinez, Garcia, meet Zix. She's been enslaved here for weeks, forced to work in dangerous conditions. Chen's voice was controlled, but Zix could hear the anger underneath. "I want both of you to spread the word to our people. This child is under our protection now." Martinez, a stocky man with graying temples, looked down at Zix with sympathetic eyes. "Just a kid. How old are you, sweetheart?" 8 rotations, Zix answered, which Chen quickly calculated as roughly equivalent to 6 Earth years. Garcia, younger and more muscular than his companion, clenched his fists. "Those bastards have been using a 6-year-old as slave labor? Commander, we can't let this stand." "We're not going to," Chen replied. "But we need to be smart about this. The station authorities outnumber us 10 to 1, and they have legal authority here. If we start a fight we can't win, Zix won't be the only one who suffers. So what do we do?" Martinez asked. Chen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she looked at Zix with the expression that reminded the young Villani of her mother when she was planning something particularly clever. "We're going to use the one advantage humans have that these aliens never expect," Chen said with a smile that was both warm and predatory. "We're going to be sneaky, patient, and absolutely relentless. By the time we're done, every worker on this station is going to know exactly what happens when you hurt a child under human protection." "What can we do to help?" Garcia asked. "For now, Zix stays with me. I want round-the-clock shifts watching her when I can't be here. No one touches her, no one threatens her, and no one puts her back to work." Chen looked at both men seriously. "I know this complicates our mission here, but I won't abandon a child to these monsters." Martinez nodded immediately. "Hell, Commander, if you hadn't done something, I would have. Some things are more important than a job." As the two men left to organize protection for Zix, Chen sat back down beside her. "You're safe now," she said simply. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I give you my word as a human that we will get you out of here." Zix looked up at this strange alien who had risked everything to help her. "Why?" she asked. "Your species barely knows mine. I am nothing to you." Chen was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "On my world, we have a saying. The measure of a civilization is how it treats its weakest members. You're not nothing, Zix. You're a child who deserves to grow up safe and happy. And any species that would enslave a child isn't civilized at all." For the first time since her capture, Zix allowed herself to hope. These humans were different from any species she had ever encountered. They seemed to fight not just for themselves, but for others who couldn't fight back. But she also knew that the station's authorities wouldn't give up easily. The real test of human resolve was yet to come. Word spread quickly through the mining station that the humans had taken the Villani child under their protection. The reaction was swift and predictable. Station Overseer Gorthak, a massive Caraxian whose black scales bore the silver markings of high rank, summoned Commander Chen to his office within hours. The Overseer's office occupied the top level of the station, with large windows that looked out over the barren landscape of Kepler 442b. Gorthak sat behind a desk made from polished asteroid metal, his reptilian features arranged in what humans might recognize as a predatory smile. Flanking him were 2 other species representatives, Vex, the scarred Caraxian who supervised the alien workers, and High Engineer Zektar, a Zephyrian whose elongated skull housed a brain renowned for its calculating intelligence. "Commander Chen," Gorthak rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "I understand you've had a misunderstanding with our disciplinary procedures." Chen stood at attention, her posture military perfect but her eyes showing no deference. "No misunderstanding, Overseer. I intervened to prevent a violation of Galactic Council law." "The small slave is property of this station," Vex interjected, his scarred snout twisting with displeasure. "Salvage rights. We found the escape pod, we claimed the contents, including a child." Chen's voice remained level, but Zix, who was listening from the corridor through a maintenance grate, could hear the ice underneath. "The Galactic Child Protection Act supersedes salvage law. You know this. Zektar leaned forward, his large head tilting to one side in the way of his species. You quote law at us, human, but you seem to forget where you are. This is a mining station at the edge of civilized space. Council law reaches here only as far as we allow it. Then you're admitting to operating illegally? Chen asked. Gorthak's laugh was like the roar of a fusion engine. Illegal? We are the law here, human. Your species may have achieved space travel, but you are still children playing at civilization. You have been here for what, 3 days? We have run this operation for 20 cycles. 20 years of slavery and abuse, Chen corrected. How impressive. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Vex stepped forward, his hand moving toward the plasma weapon at his belt. You dare insult us, human scum. Enough, Gorthak commanded, raising one massive clawed hand. Violence serves no purpose here. Commander Chen, you will return the Villani to her duties immediately. In exchange, we will overlook this breach of station protocol. No. The single word hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Zix held her breath, watching through the grate as the 3 alien overseers stared at the human woman who had just defied them. No? Zektar repeated, his voice carrying the electronic distortion common to his species. Perhaps you do not understand the consequences of refusing. Your contract can be terminated. Your people can be expelled from this station. You could find yourselves floating in space with no ship and no supplies. Chen smiled, and Zix recognized the expression as the same one she had worn when facing down Krixtal. You could try, but then you'd have to explain to your corporate sponsors why a profitable mining operation suddenly lost its entire human workforce. We do the jobs no other species will touch. You expel us and your production numbers drop by 60% overnight. There are other species willing to work, Gorthak said, but his voice lacked conviction. Are there? The hegemony races won't work in high radiation environments. The collective species require environmental controls that cost more than our entire payroll. The independent worlds don't have the population to spare. Chen clasped her hands behind her back. Face it, Overseer. You need us more than we need you. But you need this job, Vex pointed out. Your people are notorious for being desperate for work. Humanity's economy depends on these dangerous contracts. That's where you're wrong, Chen replied. We take these jobs because we choose to, not because we have to. Humans don't abandon our own when things get difficult, and we sure as hell don't abandon children. Zektar's elongated head swiveled toward Gorthak. The human makes valid points about their economic leverage. Perhaps we should consider a compromise. What kind of compromise? Gorthak asked warily. The child can remain with the humans, Zekatar said slowly, but she must still perform work duties appropriate to her size and capabilities. Light maintenance, data entry, cleaning small spaces. And the humans take full responsibility for her productivity. Chen considered this for a moment. Define appropriate work duties. 4 hours per day, no hazardous materials, adequate food and rest periods, Zektar replied. Standard juvenile worker protocols. 2 hours per day, educational activities included, and she gets the same medical care as station personnel, Chen countered. Gorthak's claws clicked against his desk as he thought. The sound was like metal striking stone, and Zix could feel the tension in the room building. Agreed, the overseer finally rumbled. But understand this, human. The child remains station property. When your contract expires, she stays here. And if your people cause any further disruptions, all agreements are void. Chen nodded curtly. Understood. But I want the agreement in writing with copies transmitted to Galactic Council oversight. Suspicious creature, Vex muttered. Careful creature, Chen corrected. Where I come from, we have a saying, trust but verify. The meeting ended with a formal contract being drawn up. As Chen left the overseer's office, Zix quickly made her way back to the human quarters. When Chen arrived, she found Zix sitting on her bunk trying to look as if she hadn't been eavesdropping. How much did you hear? Chen asked with amusement. Most of it, Zix admitted. You made them agree to let me stay with you. For now, Chen said, sitting down beside her. But you heard the terms. When our contract is up in 6 months, they expect you to stay here. Zix felt her heart sink. So I'm still trapped. Not if I have anything to say about it, Chen said firmly. 6 months is a long time. A lot can happen in 6 months, like what? Chen smiled that predatory smile again. Like finding out exactly what happened to your parents, locating any surviving family members, and building a legal case for your repatriation. Like documenting every illegal activity on this station, and transmitting that information to council authorities, like making sure that when we leave here, we take you with us. But how? Leave that to me, Chen said. For now, I want you to focus on something else. You're going to learn. Learn what? Everything, Chen replied. Human languages, galactic law, starship engineering, tactical planning. By the time we're finished, you're going to know enough to help us shut down this entire operation. Zix stared at the human woman who had become her unlikely savior. You really think you can fight the whole station? Chen's expression grew serious. Zix, there's something you need to understand about humans. We're not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but we have one quality that other species consistently underestimate. What's that? When we decide to protect something, we don't give up. Ever. We'll fight impossible odds, endure terrible hardships, and sacrifice everything we have before we'll abandon someone who depends on us. As if to prove her point, Martinez appeared in the doorway with a tray of food and Garcia following behind with an armload of data pads and learning materials. Thought the kid might be hungry, Martinez said with a grin, and Garcia here figured she might want something to read. Human children's stories, Garcia explained, setting down the data pads. Translated into galactic standard, figured she might enjoy them. Zix looked at these strange aliens who had turned their entire mission upside down, just to help one small, frightened child. For the first time since her capture, she began to believe that she might actually see her home again. But she also understood that the real fight was just beginning. 3 weeks into her new arrangement, Zix had transformed from a frightened, beaten child into something else entirely. Under human tutelage, she was becoming dangerous in ways that her captors never anticipated. Remember, Martinez explained as he showed her how to access the station's maintenance network. Information is power. The more you know about how this place operates, the better we can protect you and help others. Zix nodded, her small fingers dancing across the interface with increasing confidence. Her natural Villani aptitude for technology, combined with human training and tactical thinking, was producing remarkable results. She had already mapped 80% of the station's layout, including several sections that weren't on official blueprints. These tunnels, she said, pointing to a section of her hand-drawn map. They connect to the communication array. The Caraxians use them to move between levels without being seen by workers. Perfect, Garcia said approvingly. That's exactly the kind of intelligence we need. Commander Chen entered the cramped classroom they had set up in an unused storage compartment. Her expression was grim, and Zix had learned to read human facial expressions well enough to know that something serious had happened. We have a problem, Chen announced. I just received word from the surface. A Galactic Council inspection ship is arriving tomorrow. The 3 humans exchanged glances that Zix couldn't interpret. Martinez spoke first. That's good news, isn't it? Council oversight? Not this time, Chen replied. My sources tell me it's Inspector Kralix, a Caraxian who's been taking bribes from mining operations throughout this sector. He's not here to help anyone. Zix felt a chill of fear. What does that mean for me? It means they're going to try to make you disappear before Kralix arrives, Chen said bluntly. Either hidden somewhere off station or... She didn't finish the sentence, but Zix understood. We won't let that happen, Garcia said firmly. No, we won't, Chen agreed. But we need to change our timeline. Garcia, how's our evidence package coming? Almost complete, Garcia replied. We've documented 15 different council law violations, including child slavery, unsafe working conditions, and financial fraud. But we need more time to gather the really damning stuff. Time we don't have, Chen said. What about the communication array? Can we get a message out to a legitimate council representative? Not with the current security protocols, Martinez answered. The Caraxians monitor all outgoing transmissions. Anything we send would be intercepted. Zix had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. What if we didn't send it through normal channels? The 3 humans looked at her expectantly. The Villani trading network has its own communication protocols, she explained. My father taught me the frequencies before. Her voice trailed off, but she gathered herself. If there are any Villani ships within a few light years, I could send a distress signal directly to them. Chen knelt down to Zix's level. Would your people come for you? Yes, Zix said without hesitation. But more than that, they would bring the information to council authorities who aren't corrupt. The Villani have agreements with several species that the Caraxians can't bribe or intimidate. How would we access the communication array without being detected? Martinez asked. Zix smiled, an expression she had learned from watching humans. The maintenance tunnels I mapped. There's a direct route from the lower levels to the communication center. It's not monitored because the openings are too small for most species to use. But not too small for a Villani child, Garcia realized. Or a determined human, Chen added thoughtfully. The question is timing. The inspection ship arrives tomorrow morning. We need to send that signal tonight. The plan they developed was audacious in its simplicity. During the night shift, when most of the station's personnel were either asleep or focused on automated mining operations, Zix would lead a small team through the maintenance tunnels to the communication array. Once there, she would send her distress signal while the humans provided security and technical support. Remember, Chen emphasized as they prepared to move out, this isn't just about saving Zix anymore. If we can expose what's happening here, we might be able to free hundreds of workers across this entire mining network. They moved through the station like ghosts, using Zix's intimate knowledge of the facility to avoid patrols and security sensors. The maintenance tunnels were cramped and uncomfortable for the humans, but they pressed on without complaint. Zix found herself marveling at their determination. Most species would have given up by now, or at least complained about the discomfort. The communication center was protected by multiple security systems, but the humans had studied the layout for weeks. Martinez disabled the door sensors while Garcia handled the internal monitoring systems. Within minutes, they had clear access to the main communication array. I've never seen anything like this, the communications technician whispered, as Zix began working with equipment designed for beings 3 times her size. Her small fingers moved with precision across controls that most species needed 2 hands to operate. The Villani distress frequency was ancient, dating back thousands of years to when her people first began exploring space. It used quantum encryption methods that were nearly impossible to intercept or decode without specific Villani technology. When Zix activated the signal, she was sending a message that would propagate across multiple dimensional layers, reaching any Villani vessel within a 50 light-year radius. Message sent, she whispered, but it will take time for any ships to respond. How much time? Chen asked. Depending on their location, anywhere from 6 hours to 3 days. The inspection is tomorrow morning, Martinez pointed out. We might not have that long. Chen was quiet for a moment, then her expression hardened with resolve. Then we make our own time. Garcia, how quickly can you upload our evidence package to the Galactic Communication Network? If I route it through the emergency channels, maybe 20 minutes. But it will trigger every security alert on the station. Do it, Chen ordered. If we're going to die here, we're going to make sure the truth dies with us. As Garcia began uploading their carefully compiled evidence, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and they could hear the thunder of boots as security teams mobilized. That's our cue to leave, Martinez said grimly. But as they prepared to retreat through the maintenance tunnels, Zix grabbed Chen's arm. Wait, she said urgently. I'm receiving a response to my distress signal. The communication array crackled with incoming data, and suddenly the view screen filled with the familiar blue-gray features of a Villani face. This is Captain Veltar of the trading vessel, Star Zymor. We received your distress signal, little sister. Transmit your location immediately. Zix's eyes filled with tears as she recognized her uncle's voice. Uncle, I'm here. I'm alive. We are 3 hours from your position, Captain Veltar replied. Hold on, little one. We are coming. But 3 hours might as well have been 3 days. Already they could hear Caraxian voices in the corridors outside, and the maintenance tunnel access points were being sealed one by one. We're trapped, Garcia reported. They've locked down the entire section. Chen checked her weapon and looked at her team with the calm acceptance of a professional soldier. Then we make our stand here. Whatever happens, that evidence is uploaded and Zix's people know where she is. Commander, Zix said quietly, my people have a saying. The brightest stars are forged in the darkest places. Thank you for helping me remember how to shine. Chen smiled and ruffled Zix's hair affectionately. The pleasure's been all ours, kid. Now let's show these monsters what happens when they mess with humans. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the corridor as station security began breaching the sealed doors. The final confrontation was about to begin. The communication center's blast doors shuddered under the impact of industrial cutting tools. Sparks flew, as Caraxian security forces worked to breach the barriers that the humans had sealed behind them. Commander Chen counted her ammunition while Garcia frantically worked to complete the evidence upload. 60% uploaded, Garcia reported, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. The files are huge, but they're going through. How long? Chen asked, checking the makeshift barricades they had constructed from equipment racks and metal panels. 8 minutes, maybe 10. Martinez laughed grimly from his position near the door. In case anyone's keeping track, we've got about 3 minutes before they cut through. Zik stood at the communication console, maintaining contact with her uncle's ship while monitoring station security frequencies. Her small hands moved with practiced efficiency across controls that had seemed impossibly complex just weeks before. Uncle reports they're engaging station defenses, she announced. The Starzimor has called for backup from the trade fleet. Good, Chen replied. But it won't help us right now. Garcia, can you route the upload through multiple channels? If they cut our primary connection... Her words were interrupted by a deafening crash as the blast doors finally gave way. Caraxian security troops poured through the opening, their weapons raised and their eyes filled with the fury of predators whose prey had escaped one too many times. Surrender immediately, commanded Captain Vex, his scarred features twisted with rage. You are guilty of sabotage, theft of corporate property, and inciting rebellion. Chen stepped forward, placing herself between the armed Caraxians and Zix. Her weapon remained holstered, but her posture radiated the confident readiness of a veteran soldier. We're guilty of protecting a child and exposing your crimes, she replied calmly. The Galactic Council will be very interested in our evidence files. What evidence? Vex snarled. We detected your illegal transmission, but our technical staff has confirmed that no data left the station. Garcia smiled without looking up from his console. That's because your technical staff is incompetent. The upload finished 30 seconds ago. The revelation hit the Caraxian like a physical blow. Vex's weapon swung toward Garcia, but before he could fire, Chen's sidearm appeared in her hand with the fluid motion of someone who had trained for decades. I wouldn't, she said quietly. The standoff stretched for several heartbeats. 20 armed Caraxians facing 4 humans and 1 small Volani child. The math was impossibly bad, but Chen's team showed no signs of backing down. You cannot escape, Vex pointed out with cold logic. We have you outnumbered 5-1. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Counteroffer, Chen replied. You let us walk out of here, and when the council investigators arrive, we might put in a good word about your cooperation. Vex's laugh was like the hiss of escaping steam. Council investigators? Inspector Kralix arrives in 4 hours. He will find nothing but a tragic accident that claimed the lives of some careless human workers. Kralix won't be the only inspector, Zix said suddenly, her voice carrying across the room with surprising authority. When my uncle's distress call reaches the Volani Trade Assembly, they will demand a full investigation by neutral parties. The child speaks truth, added a new voice from the corridor behind the Caraxian troops. Everyone turned to see Overseer Gorthak entering the communication center, his massive frame filling the doorway. But his expression was different from the predatory confidence he had displayed in previous encounters. Now he looked like someone who had just received very bad news. Sir? Vex questioned. I have been in contact with our corporate sponsors, Gorthak rumbled. It seems that certain evidence files have already been disseminated to law enforcement agencies across 3 sectors. Our operation here is finished. Chen's team exchanged glances, hope beginning to flicker in their eyes. However, Gorthak continued, his voice carrying ominous undertones, our sponsors are most displeased with the humans responsible for this interference. They have authorized extreme measures to ensure that no testimony can be given against us. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Chen understood immediately what was being proposed. You're talking about murdering council citizens, she said flatly. That will bring more heat than you can possibly handle. Dead humans tell no tales, Vex observed with satisfaction. And accidents happen all the time in dangerous mining operations. You're forgetting something important, Martinez interjected from his position near the equipment racks. What's that? Gorthak asked. Martinez smiled with the particular expression that humans wore when they were about to reveal a trump card. You're forgetting that we're humans. The explosion that followed was not large by military standards, but in the confined space of the communication center, it was devastating. Martinez had spent his time during the standoff preparing demolition charges from mining equipment, turning the humans' position into a fortress that their enemies would have to destroy to capture. When the smoke cleared, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across a scene of twisted metal and fallen bodies. Chen's team had taken cover behind reinforced equipment racks, while the Caraxian forces found themselves scattered and disoriented. "Status report," Chen called out. "Garcia's unconscious but breathing," Martinez replied. "Equipment's mostly intact." "I'm fine," Zix added, her voice shaky but determined. The surviving Caraxians were regrouping in the corridor, but their confidence was shaken. These humans had proven far more resourceful and dangerous than anyone had anticipated. "This is not over," Vex growled from the doorway, his armor scorched but intact. "We will return with heavier weapons." "No, you won't," Chen replied calmly. As if summoned by her words, the station's communication array suddenly crackled with new transmissions. Multiple ships were requesting docking permission, and their identification codes marked them as Council enforcement vessels. "This is Captain Veltar of the Villani Trade Fleet," announced a voice that made Zix cry out with joy. "We are accompanied by Council peacekeepers and demand immediate access to this station. Any interference will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council." Gorthak's expression went through several rapid changes before settling on defeat. "Stand down," he ordered his troops. "All of you stand down immediately." "Sir?" Vex questioned. "It's over," Gorthak replied heavily. "We gambled and lost. Fighting Council peacekeepers will only make our situation worse." As the immediate danger passed, Chen knelt beside the communications console where Zix was frantically working to establish contact with the incoming ships. "Uncle?" Zix called into the transmission array. "Uncle, can you hear me?" "I hear you, little star," came the reply, and even the humans could hear the emotion in the Villani captain's voice. "Hold on just a little longer. We are almost there." Chen smiled as she watched the reunion between niece and uncle, even though they were still separated by space and metal. After weeks of fighting impossible odds, it seemed that humans and their stubborn refusal to abandon those under their protection had won the day. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The evidence they had transmitted would bring down the entire mining network, and there would be other children in other places who needed someone to stand up for them. "Martinez," she said quietly. "Yes, Commander? Start thinking about our next assignment. Something tells me we're going to be very busy." The sound of docking clamps engaging echoed through the station as the first rescue ships arrived. The long nightmare was finally coming to an end. The Council peacekeepers moved through the mining station with the efficient precision of professional law enforcement officers. Within hours of their arrival, the entire facility had been secured, evidence collected, and interviews begun with both workers and supervisors. The humans watched with satisfaction as Overseer Gorthak and his lieutenants were led away in restraint fields. In the station's medical bay, Zix sat on an examination table while a Villani physician checked her for signs of maltreatment. Captain Veltar, her uncle, stood nearby with tears streaming down his blue-gray cheeks. The reunion had been emotional for everyone present, but particularly for the humans who had fought so hard to make it possible. "The physical injuries are healing well," the physician reported to Commander Chen. "But the psychological trauma will take time. She has been through experiences that no child should endure." "She's stronger than you might think," Chen replied, watching Zix demonstrate the human communication techniques she had learned to her fascinated uncle. "These past few weeks she's shown more courage than most adults." Captain Veltar approached Chen with the formal bearing of a ship's officer. "Commander, I do not have words sufficient to express my gratitude. When we received Zix's distress signal, we feared we might be too late." "We made a promise," Chen said simply. "Humans don't break promises to children." "The reputation of your species will be greatly enhanced by this action," Veltar continued. "The Villani Trade Assembly is already preparing formal recognition of human courage and integrity. There will be significant economic opportunities arising from this partnership." Chen smiled. "I appreciate that, Captain, but we didn't do this for economic gain." Veltar looked puzzled. "Then why? Your species had no obligation to help a Villani child. The risk to your own people was enormous." "That's exactly why we had to help," Martinez interjected from where he was helping Garcia. who was still recovering from his concussion. "Where we come from, you don't abandon kids just because it's dangerous or inconvenient." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Inspector Kralix, the corrupt Caraxian official who had been scheduled to whitewash the station's operations. His entrance was considerably less authoritative than he had probably planned. 2 council peacekeepers flanked him, and his restraint cuffs indicated that his own crimes had been discovered. "Commander Chen," he hissed as he was led past, "you have no idea what forces you have interfered with. This mining operation was small compared to others in the network. You have made enemies who will not forget." Chen looked at the disgraced inspector with the same calm expression she had worn throughout the crisis. "Good. I'd hate to think we weren't making a difference." As Kralix was taken away, peacekeeping Captain Jakari approached their group. The tall insectoid Manthari officer had been leading the investigation, and her compound eyes reflected the satisfaction of a job well done. "Commander Chen, your evidence package was extraordinarily thorough," Jakari reported. "We have identified 17 separate mining operations using similar illegal practices. This investigation will likely result in the liberation of thousands of enslaved workers." "What about the corporate sponsors?" Chen asked. "The ones really responsible for setting up these operations?" "That investigation will take longer, but your evidence provides clear financial trails. Several major corporations are already distancing themselves from the mining consortium." Jakari's mandibles clicked, and what Chen had learned was a Manthari expression of approval. "Your species' attention to detail is impressive." "We learn from the best," Chen replied, glancing at Zix, who was now showing her uncle the technical skills she had acquired. "There is another matter," Jakari continued. "The Council has reviewed the circumstances of your intervention. Officially, you violated numerous station protocols and engaged in unauthorized military action." Chen's team tensed, but Jakari continued before anyone could respond. "However, the Council also recognizes that your actions were taken to protect a child and expose serious crimes. Rather than face disciplinary action, you are being offered a new assignment." "What kind of assignment?" Chen asked warily. "The Council is forming a new task force to investigate and shut down illegal operations throughout the outer sectors. Your team's unique combination of technical skills, tactical expertise, and moral courage makes you ideal candidates for this work." Garcia, despite his headache, perked up with interest. "Are you talking about a roving commission to hunt down slavers and other criminals?" "Essentially, yes. You would have broad authority to investigate, gather evidence, and coordinate with peacekeeping forces. The work would be dangerous, but the potential impact on galactic civilization would be enormous." Chen looked at her team, reading the excitement in their expressions. This was the kind of mission that would let them make a real difference, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. "There's one condition," Chen said after a moment. "What condition?" "Zix comes with us." The sudden silence was broken by Zix's excited squeak from across the room. She had been listening, of course, and her large eyes were bright with anticipation. Captain Veltar looked concerned. "Commander, she has already endured so much trauma. Surely she should return home to heal and recover." "Uncle," Zix said, approaching the group with the confidence she had learned from humans, "I want to help. There are other children like me trapped in places like this. I can help find them." "The work would be extremely dangerous," Jakari pointed out. "Council regulations prohibit minors from participating in active law enforcement operations." "Then we'll need to change the regulations," Chen replied. "Zix has skills and knowledge that we can't replace. She understands alien technology systems better than most adults, and she's small enough to access areas that we can't reach. More importantly," Martinez added, "she's got the heart for this kind of work. She's seen what happens when good people don't stand up to bullies." Zix looked up at her uncle with pleading eyes. "Please, Uncle, I want to make sure no other children have to go through what I did." Captain Veltar was quiet for a long moment, clearly torn between protecting his niece and respecting her wishes. Finally, he knelt down to her level. "You are certain this is what you want? You could come home, go to school, play with other children your age?" "I can do that later," Zix replied with determination. "Right now there are children who need help. The humans taught me that sometimes you have to do what's right, even when it's hard." Veltar looked at Chen with an expression that mixed admiration with concern. "Your species is having a significant influence on my niece." "The influence goes both ways," Chen assured him. "We've learned as much from her as she has from us." After considerable discussion and bureaucratic maneuvering, A compromise was reached. Zix would be assigned as a technical consultant to Chen's team, with appropriate safety protocols and her uncle's ship serving as her official guardian vessel. The arrangement was unprecedented, but then again, so was everything else about the human approach to law enforcement. As they prepared to leave the mining station for their new assignment, Zix stood in the observation lounge looking out at the ships of the rescue fleet. Her reflection in the transparent aluminum showed a child who looked older than her years, but whose eyes still held hope and determination. "Regrets?" Chen asked, joining her at the window. "No," Zix replied without hesitation. "I'm ready for whatever comes next. It won't be easy. There will be more stations like this one, more criminals who think they can hurt innocent people." Zix smiled with an expression that was part Villani serenity and part human determination. "Then it's good that they'll be facing humans. I've learned something about your species, Commander." "What's that?" "You're absolutely terrible at knowing when you're outmatched, and somehow that makes you win anyway." Chen laughed, ruffling Zix's hair in the affectionate gesture that had become habitual. "Come on, kid. Let's go save the galaxy." As the rescue fleet prepared to depart, carrying liberated workers to safety and prisoners to justice, the unlikely partnership between humans and one small Villani continued to grow stronger. They had saved each other, and now they were ready to save others. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans decided to protect something. It wasn't going to be pleasant for the criminals. 2 years later, the Joint Task Force ship New Dawn drifted silently in the shadow of an asteroid field. Its sensors focused on a distant space station that bore the same ominous industrial design as the mining facility where it had all begun. Commander Chen studied the tactical display with the practiced eye of someone who had conducted dozens of similar operations. "Thermal signatures indicate approximately 300 workers," reported Lieutenant Garcia, now fully recovered and promoted to the team's intelligence specialist. "Energy patterns suggest another illegal mining operation, probably extracting rare minerals from the asteroid belt." "Any signs of child workers?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. They had learned that wherever there were illegal mining operations, there were always children forced into the most dangerous jobs. "Infrared analysis shows at least 20 small-form life signs in the lower levels," confirmed Zix. Now 10 years old and serving as the team's technical specialist, her blue-gray skin bore small scars from their previous missions, but her eyes still held the determination that had first impressed the humans. "Same pattern as the last 3 stations we investigated." Master Sergeant Martinez checked his equipment one final time. "Peacekeeping fleet is in position 30 minutes out. Local authorities have been notified and are standing by to process arrests." Chen nodded, feeling the familiar mixture of anticipation and resolve that preceded each mission. Over the past 2 years, their team had shut down 47 illegal operations, liberated thousands of enslaved workers, and sent dozens of corporate criminals to council prisons. The work was dangerous, often thankless, and never seemed to end. But it was also the most meaningful thing any of them had ever done. "Remember, our primary objective is evidence gathering and worker protection," Chen reminded her team. "We go in quiet, document everything, and coordinate with the peacekeepers for arrests. No unnecessary risks." "Define unnecessary," Zix said with a smile that was pure human mischief learned from years of working with her adopted family. "Nice try, kid," Chen replied. "You're staying with the ship until we confirm the situation is secure." Zix's protest was interrupted by an urgent communication from their ship's sensors. "Commander, we're detecting an incoming vessel. Configuration matches Caraxian military transport." Chen felt her blood run cold. Intelligence reports had suggested that the remnants of the mining consortium were trying to rebuild their operations with military protection. But this was the first time they had encountered armed resistance. "How long until they reach the station?" she asked. 15 minutes, Garcia reported. "And, Commander, they're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies." "They know we're here." "Trap?" Martinez asked. "Probably," Chen agreed. "But we can't leave those workers." "Garcia, signal the peacekeeping fleet to accelerate their approach." Martinez prepped the assault pods. "We're going in fast and hard." "What about me?" Zix asked, her voice carrying the tone of someone who already knew the answer and didn't like it. "You monitor communications and coordinate with our backup," Chen replied firmly. "This one's too dangerous." But as Chen's team prepared to launch their assault pods, Zix was already working at her console. her small fingers dancing across controls that most species required multiple operators to manage. The tactical display showed the approaching Coraxian transport was heavily armed and carrying at least 2 squads of military troops. "Commander?" Zix called out urgently. "I'm detecting a shutdown sequence being transmitted to the mining station. They're about to vent the lower levels." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Venting the lower levels would eliminate the evidence of child slavery, but it would also kill every worker in those sections. "How long?" Chen demanded. 4 minutes until atmosphere evacuation begins," Zix reported, her voice steady despite the horror of what they were discussing. Chen's mind raced through the tactical situation. The assault pods could reach the station in 3 minutes, but it would take at least 10 minutes to locate and evacuate the workers in the lower levels. The arriving Coraxian transport would be able to intercept and destroy the pods before they could complete their mission. "There has to be another way," Martinez said, but his tone suggested he already knew there wasn't. "Actually, there is," Zix said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her as she continued working at her console. "I can hack the station's systems remotely and override the shutdown sequence. The technical pathways are too complex for most species to navigate quickly, but I can do it." "How long would that take?" Shen asked. "I can stop the immediate shutdown in about 30 seconds. Permanently disabling their ability to vent the lower levels would take maybe 2 minutes." "Do it," Chen ordered without hesitation. As Zix worked, her concentration was absolute. The Villani approach to technology involved a kind of intuitive understanding that other species found difficult to comprehend. She didn't just operate systems, she seemed to communicate with them directly. "Shutdown sequence neutralized," she reported after 40 seconds of intense work. "They can't vent the atmosphere now." "Excellent. Garcia, what's the status on—" Chen's words were cut off by proximity alarms as the Coraxian transport opened fire on their ship. The first volley of plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against their shields, but more were incoming. "Shields holding," Martinez reported, "but not for long against that kind of firepower." "We need to get to those workers," Chen said grimly. "If we can't use the assault pods, we'll have to find another way." "I have an idea," Zix announced, her voice carrying the particular tone that meant she was about to suggest something dangerous and probably brilliant. "The mining station has automated ore transporters running between the surface and the lower levels. If I can override their safety protocols, we could use them to get your team directly to the worker areas." "Those systems aren't designed for human transport," Garcia pointed out. "The acceleration alone could be fatal." "Not if we modify our EVA suits for high-G protection and time the insertion perfectly with the transport cycle," Chen mused, already seeing the possibilities. "It's insane, but it might work." "It's definitely insane," Martinez agreed cheerfully. "When do we launch?" As Chen's team prepared for the most dangerous infiltration of their careers, Zix continued working to maintain control over the station's systems. The Coraxian transport was now deploying fighters to attack their ship, while also sending troops to the mining station to eliminate evidence. "Commander," Zix said as the team prepared to launch, "there's something else. I'm detecting other signals in the system. Ships that aren't broadcasting identification codes." "More hostiles?" Chen asked. "I don't think so. The energy signatures are familiar." Zix's expression brightened with sudden recognition. "It's Uncle Veltar. The Villani trade fleet is here." As if summoned by her words, the communication array crackled with incoming transmissions in multiple languages and frequencies. "Attention Coraxian vessels. This is Captain Veltar of the Villani trade fleet. You are engaging a council law enforcement operation in violation of Galactic Treaty. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. This is Admiral Jakari of the Council Peacekeeping Force. All unauthorized vessels will stand down immediately. This system is under Council protection. And this is Captain Sarah Chen of the enforcement vessel New Dawn. Any Coraxian personnel found harming civilian workers will be considered war criminals. You have been warned." The combined fleet that emerged from hyperspace was impressive by any standard. 3 Council peacekeeping dreadnoughts, a dozen Villani trade vessels that had been converted to carry security teams, and several ships from other species that had joined the effort to combat slavery throughout the outer sectors. Faced with overwhelming odds, the Coraxian commander chose discretion over valor. "We are withdrawing," came the sullen transmission. "But this is not over, humans. Your interference has been noted. Looking forward to it, Chen replied cheerfully as she watched the Coraxian ships retreat. The rescue operation that followed was swift and efficient. Council peacekeepers secured the station while specialized teams evacuated the workers. As Chen had suspected, there were children among them, some as young as Zix had been when they first found her. Standing in the station's main corridor, watching as traumatized workers were led to safety and medical care, Chen felt the familiar mixture of satisfaction and sadness that followed each successful mission. They had saved these people. But somewhere else in the galaxy there were more stations, more criminals, more children in need of rescue. "Commander," Zix said, approaching with a small Thrakari child in tow. The little insectoid was clearly frightened, but Zix was speaking to her in the gentle, patient tone she had learned from humans. "This is Kliktar," Zix explained. "She's been here for 6 months. Her family's transport was attacked by raiders." Chen knelt down to the child's level, noting the same signs of maltreatment and fear that she had once seen in Zix. "Hello, Kliktar. My name is Sarah. You're safe now." The Thrakari child's compound eyes fixed on Chen with desperate hope. "Are you going to take me home?" "We're going to try," Chen promised. "And until we can find your family, you'll stay with us. We take care of each other." As medical teams checked the newly rescued workers and peacekeepers processed evidence for future trials, Chen found herself reflecting on how much had changed. Since that first desperate confrontation on Kepler 442b, what had begun as a simple mining contract had become a galaxy-wide mission to protect the innocent and punish those who would exploit them. "Regrets?" Zix asked, using the same question Chen had once asked her. "None," Chen replied without hesitation. "This is exactly where we're supposed to be." Looking at her adopted daughter, who had grown from a frightened refugee into a confident young woman, Chen felt a deep sense of pride. Zix represented everything that was best about the unlikely partnership between humans and the other species they had sworn to protect. "Come on," Chen said, ruffling Zix's hair in their traditional gesture of affection. "Let's go find this little one's family and see what other monsters need fighting." As the New Dawn prepared to depart for their next mission, carrying new crew members and renewed purpose, the bond between humans and those they protected continued to strengthen. They had learned that the galaxy was full of predators who preyed on the weak, but it was also full of people willing to fight back. And when humans decided to fight for something, they didn't know how to quit. The monsters of the galaxy had been warned. Now they were learning what that warning meant.